It's officially respect my decision season with recent decommitments at Ohio State and Georgia. Another major QB domino is about to fall, and there's Bedlam this weekend in Norman. This is the Inside Scoop. I am your host, Josh Newberg. Let's bring on Director of Recruiting for On3, Chad Simmons. Chad, I want to start with some big news that you dropped on Tuesday. Five-star offensive tackle Samson Okunlola is visiting or was visiting UF. You broke the news. He's taken a couple of official visits already, Michigan State, Miami, and Alabama. This was an unofficial visit to Florida. What does this mean for Okunlola's recruitment, and what's up next for him?
You know, I think the biggest thing it shows is Miami has some competition. This has been kind of a foregone conclusion somewhat that Miami was going to be very, very tough to beat, and definitely in the driver's seat to land the big kid from the Boston area. And obviously he's a coveted offensive tackle. He has other interests. I think obviously Alabama's one. You mentioned Michigan State, Ohio State's up there. And then now Florida, obviously getting him on campus for a multi-day unofficial visit. And then we'll likely get him back on campus for an OV in December. Shows there's some real interest in the University of Florida.
Yeah, this was a midweek visit. You don't normally see these unofficial. How did this one come about?
You know, I think it's just been, what can work into his schedule. We've talked about before him playing in that private school league. Most of their games are on Saturdays. So it's really kind of like put him in a tough situation to take visits this fall. I mean, he was at Miami a couple of weeks ago, and he did have that one off week on a Saturday, but he's been wanting to get out to see some schools face to face. This was his first opportunity. His last game was this past weekend. 2 days later, he's at the Swamp.
Do you think this will put UF in position to land an official visit from him in the future?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I mean, I think the next step for Samson is to cut his list down to 5 schools. I would expect Florida to be on that list, and likely Florida to get an official visit in December. Florida, I think, has become a major player in this race.
We know Florida. We know Miami. Who else is involved?
I think, Alabama's a dark horse. He visited there, in the summer. I think he has real interest in Alabama. And obviously what they've done as far as player development and the opportunity to play at Alabama as well, I think appeals to him. And then 2, I think Big Ten schools, Michigan State and Ohio State, are also 2 to watch. But I think it's going to start, down south between Miami and Florida, and then kind of extend from there.
All right, let's stay in the South. 4-star running back Mark Fletcher out of South Florida decommits from Ohio State last night. Wednesday evening, he put out a note saying that he is reopening his recruitment. Fletcher's the number 264th best player overall and the number 17 running back in the 2023 cycle. What happened last night? Why did he decommit from Ohio State?
Yeah, I think in the end just wants to stay closer to home. I think let's hit that repeat button. Miami, Florida. Florida versus Miami. Napier, crystal ball. There's a lot of head-to-head battles going on. Some we're talking about now. Some maybe talk about a little bit later that aren't out there just yet. But look, Fletcher, I think it's going to come down to likely Miami and Florida. He was at both schools the last couple of weeks for games. And there's always been buzz around the University of Miami, being he's at, American Heritage and Plantation, Florida, right around the corner, down south. But the school with the most buzz around it over the last few days has been the University of Florida. So keep an eye on those Gators. But I think it just comes down to him staying closer to home. Obviously, he loves Ohio State. Their running back history, Tony Alford, the running backs coach there. But he sees the opportunity to go into and stay home in the Sunshine State and play for Miami or Florida. I think it comes down to those 2 schools.
Yeah, like you said, he was in Gainesville last weekend, but then the Canes, they don't have a running back committed. Florida has 1, and the Canes also have a couple running backs that look like they're headed to the portal. So it'll be a big decision for Mark Fletcher and another major battle between Miami and Florida. Let's keep it moving. Another big decommitment this weekend came from 4-star DB Daniel Harris out of Gulliver Prep. He decommitted from Georgia, the number 20 ranked cornerback in the country. This is a loss for the Bulldogs. They have a very strong class, but Daniel Harris was their top-ranked DB. Why did he decommit, and what's going on with his recruitment?
Yeah, I think anytime, these guys, a school like Georgia specifically will get, recruited against about how good their roster is, what their depth is at a kid's position. Obviously, he's well aware of what Georgia has, what they're recruiting, who's in this class, what their depth. They've been pretty, I think, transparent about that, and he sees it on their roster. So I think that kind of got into Harris's head a little bit to examine other opportunities, whether it's been, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State's been in there, but very rarely do you see a kid, commit to the same school twice. I wouldn't be surprised if Harris gets back in this Georgia class. I hinted at that a couple of days ago in the Simmons Scoop about Harris still considering Georgia. There's been multiple, deep, strong conversations I've confirmed between him, Fran Brown, the Georgia staff since that decommitment. I think Penn State's probably their biggest competition right now, but I do like, as weird as it sounds, Georgia as a school trending to get Harris back in the end.
So wait, this doesn't happen often. When a prospect decommits, he very rarely goes back. So why the decommitment?
Yeah, I just think, I think just things got into his head and he wanted to, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it other than just, I think people going against Georgia, the better opportunity, things in the
people
kid's
got in his ear.
Yeah, I just think things got into his head. He wanted to make sure, again, I don't know if he commits tomorrow, 2 weeks, or early signing period. And I do think Penn State is a major player, no doubt about that. But based on what I'm hearing right now, as we record this, I do like, Georgia as the school trending as the leader to get Harris back in this class.
Okay, so a decommitment this week followed by a possible recommitment in the future. We'll see how this one plays out. Let's stay on that decommitment train. Arion Carter decommits from Memphis. The Tennessee linebacker, whose recruitment has absolutely exploded during his senior season, is officially back on the market now after taking visits to Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, and others. So what do you make of this news?
Well, I'll start with this. I do not expect Carter to recommit to Memphis. That's
glad we could clear that up.
I do think he ends up elsewhere. I think this still comes down to two SEC schools, Alabama and Tennessee. Now, obviously, he took a trip to Ohio State last week, had a great time. I just don't think it moved the needle enough to make Ohio State a contender with the schools closer to home in SEC country. And obviously, there's been talk about this weekend him getting to Auburn. That's not been finalized as of Thursday morning. They're still working out the details there. Could it be an official visit, unofficial visit? They're working, obviously. Carter's not one to waste time. He doesn't want to go on a trip if it's not an official visit. Now, with Auburn, they don't have a head coach in place. So that's still to be determined if he goes to Auburn this weekend or maybe waits till December to go there. But right now, even if he does make it to Auburn, Alabama and Tennessee have put themselves in position to be the two battling in the end for the four-star linebacker.
All right. Let's no more decommitments now. We're going to just talk about commitments from here on out with you, Chad. Daevin Hobbs, 5-star defensive lineman, commits next week. Alabama had a lot of buzz around them coming off of that visit a couple weeks ago. Is there a chance that Alabama or Georgia could shock the world and land Hobbs over Tennessee?
Yeah, I think there's a chance for sure. I don't think it's a done deal. I don't think he's made that phone call just yet. To any school, good news or bad news. Obviously, I think the plan for Hobbs is to have 6 hats on the table. I think there's really only 3 hats in the game when you talk about it, being the 3 you mentioned, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. He's going to keep UNC, the in-state school in play. Then Ohio State and Michigan, who came in somewhat late, will have hats on the table as well. I do think this has been trending towards Tennessee maybe over the last week to week and a half. I think Bama has faded some. Georgia has surged. I think it comes down to Georgia being Tennessee's biggest competition a week or so out from that decision. I don't think Alabama's out, but I do think they're running third here late.
Yeah, there was a lot of buzz coming out of that Bama visit. It was going to be interesting to see if they could sustain that momentum through decision time, but it looks like we'll see. But Tennessee's still leading in the RPM. Let's move on to 4-star edge Tamorrion Parker. He announces his decision next week as well, and Clemson is putting together a heck of a defensive line class. They were his last visit and lead on the recruiting prediction machine at 62%. What has Clemson done to get themselves in this position to land, Parker?
Look, Parker liked Clemson before he even had the offer. He mentioned them very, very early in his recruitment. That's a school that he wanted to get an offer from. He wanted to be recruited by. He visited them early last year, coming out of the COVID break in 2021. And he didn't get the offer until, this fall. And for them to kind of surge that late over the one-time Penn State commit, Florida was involved, Alabama and Georgia at one time. Of course, Tennessee has been involved for a very long time as well. He visited Texas A&M this fall for a game, but it's turned into a Clemson-Tennessee battle. He has family in the Knoxville area, but I'm rolling still with Clemson. I put an RPM pick in for them right after the offer. I knew what that offer meant to him. He's close with Coach Hall. He likes Coach Eason a lot. He loves the culture. That Clemson commitment group has multiple guys from Alabama in it this cycle, guys that he knows, guys he's close with. And I like where Clemson's at, just that connection, the culture, and the opportunity to play. They have 3 guys likely getting drafted on that D-line this year. He sees that window open to step in and play early for a national contender like Clemson. I like where they're at late.
All right, Chad. Great work this week. You've been busy. I see you're on the road. Where are you going to be this weekend?
Some big-time games up in the Northeast, man. You got IMG Academy at St. Francis Academy in the Baltimore area. They'll play at the University of Maryland on Friday night. Then the private school, kind of a quote-unquote state championship game between DeMatha and St. John's on Sunday afternoon, loaded with players there as well. So up in the Northeast, it's going to be a high around, 35, I think, game time on Sunday for that classic between DeMatha and St. John. So I have multi-hoodies and a jacket and so on to stay warm up north.
All right, Chad. We'll talk to you Monday. Thank you. And we are back on the Inside Scoop. Up next, Sam Spiegelman, National Recruiting Analyst. I want to talk to you, Sam, about another major 2024 QB domino that's about to fall. DJ Lagway, the number 2 ranked quarterback in the On3 rankings, he is set to make his decision on December 7th, meaning after December 7th, 4 out of the top 5 quarterbacks in the 2024 rankings will be committed to a program. So that being said, there's been lots of visits to UF. There's been lots of visits to Texas A&M. I think there's been 3 trips to Clemson, a couple trips to LSU. What do we make of this recruitment about 3 weeks from commitment time?
Yeah, we've talked about the DJ Lagway travel schedule for several months because he has been so active with his family, with his teammates, exploring all of his top options. As you mentioned, he's been to Florida twice. He's been to Texas A&M twice. He's been to Arkansas. He's been to the Cotton Bowl. He's been to LSU. He's been to Clemson. He's set to visit USC later this month. That will be an incredibly big visit as we move closer to the December 7th commitment date. He's been doing this research, and at the same time, he's continued to move up his timeline. You'll remember we originally talked about an early spring commitment after official visits. After these game day visits, which he has been very open about, these loom very large toward ultimately making up his mind. He's moved it up to December 7th. He's going to follow along with the rest of this 2024 class of quarterbacks that seem to be coming off the board left and right. And in about 3 weeks after this USC visit, DJ Lagway will follow suit.
Have you put a pick in on the recruiting prediction machine?
I have. I'm going with Florida for Lagway, and I think throughout the fall, Florida and Clemson have been the 2 teams steadily recruiting DJ Lagway. I think that's been a theme since before September 1st and has only continued afterward. Obviously, he's visited Florida twice. He was just in Clemson last month. He's been to Baylor, he's been to A&M, and he's set to visit USC. But after a lot of these visits, Florida and Clemson were the 2 teams that I've continued to hear about. And Florida in particular, it matches up really nice with the way that Anthony Richardson has played. And you can see so many parallels between the way that Anthony Richardson has all these physical gifts and is thriving in Billy Napier's run-heavy offense. That works so perfectly for DJ Lagway. I think that Billy Napier, Ryan O'Hara, and Joe Hamilton, a Houston guy on the Florida staff, have really made Lagway feel like a priority. Now, they just flipped Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Rashada's impact on this recruitment, or if there is an impact from Rashada's
I
commitment.
don't think there is. I think that, Florida is trying to restock the quarterback room, and every single Power 5 program needs to find a quarterback every single year. But Lagway has been recruited as if he is the guy for 2023 and 2024. I think that the fact that he has been such a priority for Florida, there is confidence in Gainesville. Obviously, this USC visit looms very large considering his relationship with Lincoln Riley and Lincoln Riley's success with Jalen Hurts. But I like where Florida stands at this point, and with the decision now on the clock, I think the Gators are in a strong position to close with one of the best in 2024.
Yeah, so if I'm reading this right, about 3 weeks out, I think the way we can set this up is Florida's the favorite, at least in your eyes. Clemson is the biggest competition. And then you kind of have two dark horses. One is USC because he has a visit coming up, and Lincoln Riley's a great recruiter of quarterbacks. And then Texas A&M, right? We're just not going to rule out Texas A&M for business reasons and others. But Jimbo has done a good job of recruiting quarterbacks. So is it fair to say those are the four teams that fans should be focusing on?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think big picture wise, if you're a Texas A&M fan, I think all the buzz around College Station is who's going to be calling plays for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies next year. And listen, Texas A&M was the first scholarship offer for DJ Lagway, and he's visited College Station more than any other campus in the entire country. It's only a few hours from Willis, Texas, which is right outside of Houston. If Texas A&M has a new offensive coordinator, you can bet that they're going to reach out to Lagway first and foremost and see if they're going to, knock him off of wherever he's committed this time next month. But that's the beauty of recruiting. He's going to make a decision in 3 weeks, and it's going to be up to that school to hold on after a tumultuous coaching carousel, which happens every single year around this time.
Yep. I'm sure this won't be the last we talk of Lagway. Let's move to Norman, Oklahoma, where Bedlam heads this weekend. Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, and it is going to be a loaded visitor list. 5-star Oklahoma commitment Jackson Arnold, the all-quarterback everything, is going to be there, along with 5-star David Hicks, an Aggie commitment, 5-star Peyton Bowen, a Notre Dame commitment, and Damian Sanford, another Aggie commitment. So what's up with the Sooners recruiting right now? The season might not be going that great, but recruiting is elite right now.
Yeah, and they're going into what should be probably one of the most pivotal recruiting weekends left on the calendar before the early signing period. You talked about some of the names that are coming on campus. These have been some of their top targets. They might be committed to Texas A&M and to Notre Dame, but they have been high on Oklahoma's board since the spring. We talk about David Hicks, committed to Texas A&M last month over these Sooners. But this official visit has been in the book since the summertime, and he's sticking to it. He went to Oregon last weekend. He's going to head to Oklahoma this weekend. And while A&M is still feverishly trying to hold on, he is exploring his options. And I do think that Oklahoma has an opportunity here this weekend. He's got a fantastic relationship with not only Brent Venables, Miguel Chavis, and Todd Bates. And the fact that he's heading back at this time for this environment certainly looms really large for Oklahoma. And then Peyton Bowen, we talk about him every single week, but Oklahoma has not gone anywhere. Yes, he visited South Bend, and I think that there is a higher level of confidence for Notre Dame's chances of holding on to Peyton Bowen when it's all said and done. But Oklahoma is not going anywhere. They haven't gone anywhere. This visit has been set for some time. Jay Valai has done a fantastic job of recruiting the 5-star from Denton Guyer. He'll be on campus with his 5-star teammate, Jackson Arnold. The two of them are on a state championship run right now, and he'll have his whole family there. They've been to Norman a few times, and this visit, potentially has all the makings of one of these final visits before he ultimately makes up his mind.
Yeah, and right now the Sooners are sitting 7th overall in the On3 team rankings. How important is it for them to win this game at home against Oklahoma State? And the reason I ask that is because we've seen big visit weekends at Florida, at Texas, where they might not win the game. They lose on the field, but they still get a good recruiting reaction afterward. The atmosphere was there. But is this an important game for the Sooners to win?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it starts with the environment in Bedlam, which is, as historically, it's one of the best environments in all of college football. And I think that is such a mood setter for these recruits. When, if you go on a visit on a Saturday morning, you could fall asleep and take a nap in the middle of the game. But this environment is going to be electric. It's going to be a nighttime kickoff. There's going to be a ton of commitments in the stands, recruiting these players. You're going to have the 5-stars, David Hicks and Peyton Bowen and Damian Stanford coming in from Katy, Texas. The Oklahoma fan base is known for kind of setting the tempo in that environment. I think this is a really big opportunity for Brent Venables. You know, we've talked about the staff. They've lost guys like Colton Vasek, and they're trying to hold on to Anthony Evans with the national champs trying to flip him. But they have a really great opportunity with a bunch of blue chippers that have been on the board for some time. They're still very much considering Oklahoma. They're back on campus for official and unofficial visits. A win here, a great environment, and more time with this coaching staff. We know that Brent Venables and his staff are from Clemson. They're very passionate, enthusiastic coaches. And I do think that they, you know, with a win, with all these factors in place, they could move the needle with some of these big-time recruits.
And a win could vault them into maybe a top 5 class. You know, that's the difference between going from 7 to 5. You got to win these big games in front of recruits. Do you think that the Sooners have a shot at a top 5 class in Brent Venables' first season in Norman?
Listen, if they can get one, if not both, of David Hicks or Peyton Bowen, all of a sudden, I don't even know what the class will be ranked, but that's a win in my book. They've been playing from behind for both of these guys for some points of their recruitment. If you can land one or both, those are building blocks in your class. If you're Brent Venables, he's doing a fantastic job of recruiting the defensive front, and he's got his quarterback in place for, you know, Jeff Lebby has his quarterback in place really. But if you're Brent Venables and you're trying to build up your 2023 class, and you can add a 5-star on the defensive line like David Hicks away from A&M, or a 5-star game changer on the back end like Peyton Bowen, that's enough, you know, credibility in your first year, in your first full recruiting class to move forward. And I think that ultimately will give some momentum with the 2024 and 2025 classes as well.
Yeah, pivotal weekend for Oklahoma. Sam, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you Monday.
Thanks for having me.
See ya. Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.